It's another Manly Monday, and this Manly Monday, I think we're working. Yeah, I've been having some technical difficulties, but this Manly Monday, as promised, I'm going to talk about anger and specifically some things that are, I'll say, more common with men and anger. These are things I've been through as well, but I'm not typical. This does not mean that only men have problems with anger. It's just this is Manly Mondays. So we talk about issues, to men, about men, yada yada. I am going to do a Wellness Wednesday video this week about a related issue from a more general perspective. But I want to talk about men and anger. I've done it before, but I'm taking a different perspective on it based on dialogue I am having with clients, with what will eventually be the It's Not Therapy one-on-one service, still called Leanna Cares for now in beta. My schedule right now is such that every other week is less busy because a lot of people do every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. So there is some space if you'd like to book a one-on-one session to directly address anything that, might go, maybe I don't have to carry this around with me. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Ko-fi.com/Leanna K. 6 people need subsidized Leanna Care services. Right now, it's between every 2 weeks to a month that they get subsidized services. I'd like it to be a bit more with some people. Some people it's fine, but anything you can spare is greatly appreciated. I know the people that get the services appreciate it. So, anger. I've been getting a lot of clients that have basically numbed themselves out, would rather feel nothing at all, like shut off their emotions because they're so afraid of anger. Often, well, I can't think of one case. I can't think of a case personally that I see that isn't someone's father was the one that was really angry. But I do know instances where it was the mother. This isn't exclusively a parental thing, a male parent thing. But also, it's not just how dad got angry in an unhealthy way, right? It's how other people treated the kid because of that. I have personal experience with this. My father did not handle anger well, to put it lightly. And, if somebody wanted to shut me up when I got upset about something, it's, oh, you're just like your father, which is not okay to do to a kid. When there's somebody who has, I think anger management is a misnomer. I will explain why as this video goes on, but for now we'll use the term anger management. When someone cannot be angry without losing control to the point of becoming abusive, and they're an adult, and parents compare a child, now by child they usually mean under the age of 12. In this case, it usually gets people between the ages of like 12 and 15, maybe a little older. So adolescents as well. But it's not okay to do to an adolescent just because we, are not good at understanding the adolescent phase of development. Those years between like 12 and 16, 12 and 17, they're crucial and they're really poorly understood. We talk about stuff that happens to us as a little kid, but there's plenty that happens in adolescence as well. And I think a lot of men, when they're teenagers and they grow up with an angry parent, usually a dad, and and people who are like, don't be like your father, or just like your father, that really does a 1-2 punch, because they're usually at the mercy of angry dad. And then you've got a whole bunch of people making, you know, the adolescent man, boy, whatever you want to, it's in between, right? But this is somebody who came up in boyhood at the mercy of this angry dad, and now people are saying, oh, you're just like him, or don't be like that. It really screws with adolescent development in a particular way. And we see it in addiction issues. We see it in reckless behavior. We see it in the feeling of being disposable. And we see it in the inability to feel certain feelings. And anger is a big one. Because when you have no example of someone getting angry that isn't either, raging, out of control, scary, violent, name calling, threats, demands to be appeased, or what tends to happen in relationships, not all the time, but a lot of the time, one person's like blowing up, the other person either came into it with certain manipulative tendencies or had to learn manipulative tendencies, because everybody's managing the angry person in that family, and it's not healthy. People end up picking up manipulative behaviors that they don't realize are manipulative, and it really messes up their whole life, because they get reactions from people that they don't understand. They mean well, but they get these adverse reactions and they don't understand why. And it's not their fault, right? One of the things people do when they grow up with a very angry parent or an addict parent is they start anticipating needs, because you have to in those situations, right? Because if you get it wrong, if you fail to anticipate the parents' needs that tend to go off, well, then there's hell to pay. The minute that switch is flipped, there's no reasoning with them. And so often people try to guess and mind read, and they feel good when they mind read accurately. They blame themselves way too much and for the wrong things when they mind read inaccurately. And this manifests in this need to be useful among adult men that often gets perfectly decent, well-meaning guys accused of mansplaining, right? Because it's, how can I help? How can I help? How can I help? And I think that it's really important to understand the underlying dynamics, like mechanics of the phenomenon. Now, that doesn't mean you have to let somebody do something that you feel is condescending. I just personally think that you get better results when you assume everybody means well. Because if you don't assume everyone means well, why are you bothering, right? If you've got somebody who you think is legitimately a bad actor, you want to limit contact with them as much as you possibly can. You cannot work anything out with a person like that, which is why benefit of the doubt for me is a major thing, including regarding healthy anger, right? Because I had a angry dad, and I got the "you're just like your father." I wasn't. And I had to work through that. And I had to recognize that I was trying to anticipate needs with everyone around me. And I mean, it's that, see, that's an example that women get set as well. Oh, you have to, take care of people. I mean, men and women are taught to take care of people in different ways. And it's often unhealthy, and it's often not in sync with their, those elements of personality that are innate. Everybody's an individual, right? There are just certain things that make people unique and special, and you really can't change those things. You certainly can't change them via coercion or force, right? And that's the background these people are coming from. When you have an angry dad, he's trying to get his way through coercion and force, right? He's trying to be so scary that he's more scary than the thing that's scaring him or making him sad or any of those other emotions he was never taught to feel. And he makes people appease him because a big underlying factor of anger like that is an inability to separate I did a bad thing, or even I did something other people didn't like. And that's an important distinction. Doing something other people didn't like doesn't mean it's wrong morally, right? It just means that if you want these people to continue to want to have anything to do with you, you're going to have to figure it out. Next step, you see that you actually did do something wrong. That's hard to deal with. There's a natural amount of guilt that comes with that. That guilt can turn into shame. That shame can become unhealthy. And that's the thing that a lot of people are unable to deal with. And so they end up being unable to admit they've done anything wrong. Everyone is someone else's fault. Everything is persecution. Everything is drama. And personally, I think a lot more things than we recognize fall into that very first category I mentioned, right? You didn't do anything wrong. You just got a bad reaction. Now, instead of going, I didn't do anything wrong, 75% of the time, it really doesn't matter. And that's when having an angry parent kicks in and can really, coming from a background where you had an angry parent kicks in and you can really self-sabotage. So please, if you recognize yourself in this, somebody that has, please listen here, okay? Because the minute someone who had that sort of parent realizes they've upset someone or that someone is upset, they panic. And when people panic, they tend to replicate behaviors, meaning they end up unintentionally emulating the very angry parent and blowing up and freaking out because that's all they know how to do. That's best defense is a strong offense, right? Or they start emulating the manipulative parent and start pulling a whole bunch of head games that they don't realize are head games. Let's just calm down, be rational. One person told me that this actually came from a woman in this case, but if you're not comfortable continuing this conversation, I understand. Fuck off with all that, okay? Those are not well-meaning comments. Those are condescending. Now, they're not intended to be condescending. They're what they saw growing up seemed to, now, calm down. I've never seen an angry person calm down because they were told to calm down. Never personally. Anyway, but it's okay, we're all friends here, that kind of stuff. If somebody is really raging, that person cannot be reasoned with. And you're rewarding that person by appeasing them, by rewarding the bad behavior. There's a very narrow alleyway between those two bad outcomes, right? Because the last thing you want to do is actually encourage a person to blow up on you again. And this is what I realized I was doing by basically coddling the angry person, because that's what I had to do growing up. You know, it's a different message, calm down, versus, look, I want to understand why you're upset. I can't do it when you're screaming at me and calling me names. So, no, I want to work this out, but I need you to stop doing that. That's very different than calm down, right? Now, some people will blow up on you anyway, and at that point, you're an adult. You're not a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid anymore. Leave the conversation if you can. And I do not care whether it's a boss or a friend or a parent. This is something I had to learn. You do not have to sit there and get screamed at. But they'll fire me. No one who cares about you is going to want you to stay in a job where you're getting screamed at, where you're getting belittled. Workplaces stay like that because people enable those workplaces. I mean, Elon Musk is apparently a yeller too. He flips out, and he's always been that way. Dude was enabled for way too long. He probably can't change now. Trump's another one. Steve Jobs was notorious for freaking out. Now, some people, I have worked for some people who are just loud, and there's no menace behind the noise. They're just loud. They calm down in 10 minutes. It's fine. That's not the type of people we're talking about. We're talking about the people who, when they get angry, they get mean. So that's one. You don't have to take it. You really don't. Now, a lot of the time, if you get up and walk out, what's that person going to do? Right? Most places have labor laws. So, unless you're on a 3-month probation, they need to have cause to fire you. What is it? You wouldn't let me yell at you? They'll make something up. Yes, they will. But at work, you document this stuff, right? That's an aside. I just want to make sure people understand. I'm not being insensitive here, and I'm not talking about something that isn't possible. You have to recognize, well, you don't have to, but it's healthy to recognize that anger you grew up with is not healthy. And here's the mind warpy part. That parent who was angry probably tried to suppress the anger too. Probably tried to deny that they were angry. You ever had somebody freaking out, clearly pissed off? I'm not angry, I'm perfectly calm. Yeah, we've all seen that, right? Because they can't admit they're angry, right? Anger's a bad thing. Logical people don't get angry, so they can't possibly be angry. Here's the thing. Everybody gets angry. If you're not feeling anger, it's either coming out and you're rationalizing it and denying its anger, or you're directing it inward and doing a lot of damage to your psyche. Neither of them are good. So if you're one of these people who's worried about being like your father, came up on fucking Picard season 3, man. This is part of the reason I decided to talk about this. Like, what? Jean-Luc Picard? I know, but Trek is awesome. But yeah, I think a lot of people in fandom probably have that, which is why they, sought out more solitary pursuits that they can just do on their own. That's sort of a way of checking out and blocking out the world, because, home wasn't great. And that was something that, their parents probably didn't like. They mocked them for it, but they mocked them for everything, and they relatively left them alone with that stuff. In part possibly because the angry parent just didn't understand the video game or the sci-fi show, and people like that tend not to want to engage with things they don't understand, because anything that makes them feel small triggers the panic, triggers the rage. Because that's the other thing about anger. Anger can mask other feelings. Not always. Anger is a valid emotion on its own. But I know when I get angry, it's usually I'm sick of being picked on. I'm sick of feeling lousy. I'm sick of being scared all the time. I'm sick of being belittled. There's another hurt feeling under the anger. Now, that doesn't mean the anger isn't valid. It just means there's something deeper going on. Now, personally, I'm not good at being angry. It's not the way my physiology works. I can stay angry for maybe 10 minutes. Apparently a healthy cap is 20. But without further stimulus, I can stay angry for about 10 minutes and then I start feeling something else. It kind of fades. And then what's going on underneath comes out. Sometimes I wish I could stay angry a little bit more. But yeah, compassion fatigue isn't always a bad thing. More on that in future weeks, maybe. But so I had to go, okay, what do I do about it? And, I didn't want to walk around feeling bad all the time. And I didn't have that anger as a shield. And that's where the boundaries come in. That's where I realized, there's no point in yelling back at someone. I have to do it on Twitch. And I hate this part about Twitch. Because when someone's getting aggressive, it's like 3 options, right? Just ban them right away. Give them back. Obviously not, at the level of stupidity that they are. But give back. Or end the stream. And there's no perfect answer. And that's the thing I wish people understood about Twitch streaming. It seems to people who haven't done it like, oh, you're in control. You can block anybody. It's this big attention-seeking thing. For me, I feel very exposed because I don't like blocking people. I don't like the idea that somebody gets cut off from an entire community because they had one bad day and acted like an ass. Sometimes it needs to be done, but I do it very rarely because people have bad days. But some days I almost call off Twitch. Some days I do call off Twitch because who's going to take a shot at me? Who's going to take a crack at me? Who's going to say something that hurts? And you can't show hurt in public, right? The hordes descend. But I don't like knowingly being performatively angry. I do it as a joke on videos, right? Like, whoa, but it's to be entertaining. It's not, like I'm really pissed off. That would be very unwise. And it's happened on Twitch that something has legitimately pissed me off. And I will say, this pisses me off. Because this is the crazy thing about anger. All feelings. But anger is the one we're talking about right now. Whatever you suppress actually controls you more. So it is better to go, yeah, I'm angry. And own it. And bad people will use it against you. Oh, well, you clearly don't know what you're saying. That is not true. That is not true. It is possible to be angry and still rational. That's how you know it's healthy anger. Okay, when you grow up with a mad dad, right, you don't see it, but it's true. You can be pissed off and still able to make some decisions. If you practice this enough, you know which decisions you don't make because you're pissed off and which decisions you can make. But you don't, healthy anger doesn't mean you completely take leave of your senses. And it's important to feel healthy anger because the alternative to healthy anger is dissociation and depression. That was one of the things, when I battled depression in the past. That sounds so. Do you really fight it? You don't. It just gets you, right? But because I've fought my way out of it, I'd always feel incredibly angry coming out of the depressive episodes. And of course, I'd get a bad reaction from the people around me and it'd push it back down. That's something to keep in mind with depressed people, because, it's like, I compared it to, when your foot falls asleep or your leg falls asleep and it's that really uncomfortable feeling when the blood gets going again? That's what it feels like with feelings. So when you're coming out of depression, it's like, and that is human and that is valid. And it's part of the process, and shaming someone for that natural human reaction does not help. As long as they're self-aware about it. If bad behavior, you do not have to accept. The anger itself, valid emotion. So, what do I suggest so that you can feel angry, but not lose control like the mad dad did, or the mad mom, but Manly Monday, specifically mad dads. It takes practice, but when you feel yourself getting angry, name it, recognize it, stop, go, I'm angry. I don't have to do anything about that, but I'm angry and that's okay. That's valid. People get angry. Just don't have to do anything about it right now. And what you end up doing is you can strategize in advance. Like if there's somebody you know is a real button pusher, it's like, okay, if I start feeling angry, I'm going to go, make some excuse or just excuse yourself. Thanks. We'll talk later. Leave the conversation. You have that right. Not enough people use that. And one of the things that is so unhealthy about Twitter is when, or social media in general, people are getting in someone's face and then complain they got blocked. Now, I comment when someone uses a block list. I comment when I've never had a bad exchange with someone and I'm blocked. Because I have issues with block lists. Again, I don't like the idea that people get cut off from communities because they follow the wrong people, right? But if I'm in someone's face, usually TERFs, and they block me, I don't complain about that. If someone starts it and I push back and then they block, I'll probably laugh about it. But I had a client last week share a victory he had, personal victory, and he tagged me in it. And two fuckers took it as an opportunity to complain about me. And yeah, it pissed me off. One guy complained I blocked him. And I remember, and this is very rare that I remember why I blocked someone. It's probably that. But this guy, I remember this guy because I gave him so many damn chances to stop being a dick. And he wouldn't. Blocked. He took no responsibility for it. And there he was, acting like an asshole. So I unblocked him to say, I can see you guys. The fact that you would take a personal triumph and use it to complain about me just says so much. And I was pissed because this is a person who has had a legitimate rough run of things. And every achievement is just, I'm so thrilled for them, but they earn every win because it is hard, legitimately. And these fuckers just decided to make it about something petty. And I see that all the time. People talk about, something, oh, thanks so and so. This is so great. I don't say anything. Not the time. Not the time. But that's somebody who can't control their anger and resentment. And that's what happens. The anger makes you petty. And this is probably someone who grew up with at least one angry parent, possibly addiction in the house. And so they don't know how to feel feelings. A lot of addicts use substances to numb because they can't handle overwhelming emotions. And so they avoid it. It's not going to come all at once. Validating feelings without doing anything about it. It is going to take practice. And that's why it can help to tell the people in your life what you're doing that you do trust, so that they understand if they get a weird reaction out of you, they know. It's really important to communicate what you're trying to do in advance, because nobody should be mind reading. This is something we'll cover in future because it's a big one and it's more of a Wellness Wednesday topic. And a lot of people don't believe me that you shouldn't mind read, but you should always, always check out something you're seeing. Don't assume and act on it. It leads to too many communication breakdowns. But I understand that that's difficult to believe when you had to be a mind reader at the age of 9, right? I get it. Been there. But yeah. And it's possible to go, I'm pissed off. And I'll say, I'm pissed off. And so I don't want to make any decisions. There's been time on Twitch, it's like, man, just apologize. We can let this go by. And they won't. And that's stupid. To choose getting blocked from a community that you enjoy over apologizing for being a dick. That's somebody whose anger is out of control because they're not able to logically recognize that feeling's gonna fade. The consequences of acting like an idiot won't. Because you only get so many, oh, I lost my temper. That's one of those things that everybody gets 1 or 2 with those. Especially if they've communicated in advance that it's something they're working on. That's one of those things. And, if someone, I have this one client, they just had a death very close to them. And not a doggy like me, but a person. And so they're having bouts of anger. And they apologize afterwards. It's like, no, it's okay. They're not angry at me. They're angry at the situation. They're struggling with loss of control. That's cool. That's different. I know it's not directed at me. And that's a stage of grief. So that makes sense. But when it just comes out of nowhere and somebody refuses to respect boundaries, big sign your anger's out of control. You're blowing past people's boundaries. And they're telling you, hey, not okay. And you're so angry you don't care. That's out of control anger. No matter how angry you are, it is possible to still recognize limits, to see the yellow lights, to see the red lights, right? The stop signs, the slow signs. You can be angry and still respect those. It does take practice, but it's possible. Trust me. I had to walk that road. But none of this, again, is possible unless you can feel anger without it being was it in Elden Ring, the frenzy flame? I finally beat the game, by the way. Ranni Star's ending is awesome. But it is possible for it to be controlled burn. It's just very hard when you had no example of it growing up. And so you end up being afraid of anger, you end up suppressing anger, and then you get that dissociation or depression. I've experienced both. I get it. You'd rather take it out on you than take it out on the people around you. But there is a third option. That's don't do either. So if you'd like more on this topic, please let me know. This is hours and hours and hours of content right here dealing with anger. I'm going to wrap for now. Again, we're going to sort of continue this on Wellness Wednesday. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it who can't afford it and are dealing with issues just like this. Ko-fi.com/Leanna K. Thanks for watching Manly Mondays.